A grieving father makes a desperate choice. He adopts a sister for his paralyzed daughter, hoping to bring light back into her world. But from the moment the new girl arrives, everything spirals into chaos. The two girls can't stand each other. Their home turns into a battlefield, and it seems like Ethan's plan has only made things worse. Until one day, the unthinkable happens. His daughter, who swore she'd never fight again, accepts a challenge that could change her life forever. But can she truly overcome the past that broke her? And what secret does her new sister hold that will lead to a miracle no one saw coming? This story will take you on an unforgettable journey of pain, resilience, and the power of second chances. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The kitchen clock ticked away, each second echoing through the empty house like a hammer against Ethan Calloway's heart. Outside, rain pelted the windows with increasing fury, matching the storm of emotions churning inside him. The weak overhead light cast long shadows across the worn kitchen table, where his late wife's coffee mug sat untouched, exactly where she'd left it that morning 2 years ago. Ethan's tired eyes fixed on the faded lipstick mark still visible on the rim. Sarah had been laughing about something that morning, her eyes crinkling at the corners, the way they always did when she was truly happy. The memory made his chest ache. He could still hear her voice, light and musical, teasing him about his messy bedhead. Thunder rolled overhead, making the windows rattle. The house seemed to groan under the weight of the storm, or perhaps under the weight of all the silence it now contained. Ethan rubbed his face with trembling hands, feeling every one of his 45 years in the deep lines around his eyes. The constant worry had aged him more than time itself. Before him lay a stack of adoption papers, their crisp white edges standing out against the dark wooden table. Each page represented hope, or maybe desperation. He wasn't sure anymore which was which. The social worker's words echoed in his mind. Sometimes the best healing comes from unexpected places. His thoughts drifted upstairs to Lily's room, where his daughter had locked herself away again. The soft whir of her wheelchair had become a rare sound in the house these days. 2 years had passed since the accident that took Sarah and left their 16-year-old daughter paralyzed from the waist down, but sometimes it felt like it had happened yesterday. The doctor's grave faces and antiseptic hospital halls still haunted his dreams. The silence hurt most of all. Lily, who once filled their home with laughter and endless chatter about track meets and racing strategies, now spoke only when absolutely necessary. Her words, when they came, were sharp and bitter, designed to keep everyone at a safe distance. The trophies in her room gathered dust, painful reminders of the life she'd lost. Ethan's hand brushed against the adoption papers as another flash of lightning illuminated the kitchen. He remembered all the specialists they'd seen, physical therapists, counselors, grief experts. Lily had rejected them all, her fierce independence turning to angry isolation. The last therapist had left in tears after Lily's cutting remarks about fake people with fake smiles trying to fix what can't be fixed. The woman's defeated expression had mirrored his own helplessness. The house creaked, and Ethan glanced up at the ceiling, wondering if Lily was awake. Was she staring at her own ceiling, lost in the same memories that haunted him? Or had she found that numbness she seemed to chase these days? Sometimes he heard her crying late at night, but she always denied it in the morning. His fingers traced the edge of the adoption papers. The solution had come to him during one of his sleepless nights. A desperate plan, maybe, but something had to change. They couldn't go on like this, trapped in their private prisons of grief. The emptiness of the house had become unbearable, a constant reminder of all they'd lost. Thunder crashed overhead, making him jump. The sound reminded him of the screeching tires from that rainy night 2 years ago. He could still hear the metal crunching, still smell the burning rubber and rain-soaked asphalt. The memories threatened to overwhelm him, but he forced them back. He couldn't fall apart. Not now. Not when Lily needed him to be strong. She'd already lost too much. With hands that wouldn't stop shaking, Ethan picked up the pen. The metal felt cold against his fingers as he positioned it over the signature line. Another crack of lightning illuminated the kitchen, throwing his shadow against the wall. In that brief flash of light, he could almost see Sarah standing there, nodding her encouragement the way she always did when he faced difficult decisions. Her presence felt so real, it made his heart stutter. Taking one final deep breath, Ethan pressed the pen to paper. His signature flowed across the line, shaky but determined. As the ink dried, he released the breath he'd been holding, feeling the weight of the decision settle over him like a heavy blanket. There was no going back now. The thunder rumbled again as he stared at his name on the papers. He didn't know if this would fix things, but he had to try. Lightning flashed once more, briefly illuminating the silent, empty house, a house that desperately needed to remember what hope felt like. Maybe, just maybe, this new addition to their broken family could help them all find their way back to the light. Gray clouds hung low in the sky as Ethan's car wound through the city streets. At each red light, he reached for the manila folder on the passenger seat, scanning the details of Sophia's case file. His fingers trembled slightly as they traced over the words, leaving small wrinkles in the paper's edge. 15 years old, he read quietly. Orphaned at age 6. His heart clenched at the next line. Several placements, none permanent. The words blurred together as his eyes grew damp. The words painted a picture of loss that felt too familiar. His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel as he waited for another light to change. The phrase, resilient but distrustful, jumped out at him, making him wonder if he was doing the right thing. Would Sophia even want to be part of their broken family? Could they possibly give her what she needed when they were still struggling themselves? The foster care center looked exactly as it had yesterday, a plain brick building with faded blue trim and children's drawings taped to the windows. A deflated basketball lay forgotten in the small patch of grass out front. Ethan parked his car and took 3 deep breaths before stepping out, straightening his jacket nervously. Inside, Mrs. Hathaway greeted him with a firm handshake. Her gray hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and though her expression was stern, her eyes held warmth. "Mr. Calloway," she said, "right on time." The ticking of an old wall clock filled the silence between them. They didn't wait long before Sophia entered the room. She was thin, almost fragile-looking, but her eyes were sharp and watchful. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wore a worn jean jacket that seemed too big for her frame. The sleeves rolled up several times. Her arms were crossed tightly over her chest as she sized up Ethan, her jaw set in a way that suggested she was preparing herself for disappointment. "Sophia," Mrs. Hathaway said gently, placing a hand on the girl's shoulder. "This is Mr. Calloway." Ethan stepped forward, extending his hand, trying to keep his smile steady and reassuring. "Please, call me Ethan." Sophia stared at his offered hand for a long moment, like she was solving a complex puzzle. Finally, she reached out and shook it briefly. Her grip was weak but determined, like she was trying to prove something. Her fingers were cold against his palm. The next hour passed in a blur of signatures and paperwork. Each scratch of the pen made it more real. Sophia was officially becoming a Calloway. Mrs. Hathaway explained the final details while Sophia sat quietly, her face unreadable, occasionally picking at a loose thread on her jacket sleeve. When it was time to leave, Sophia disappeared down the hall to gather her things. She returned carrying a single duffel bag that looked half empty, the blue fabric worn thin at the corners. The sight made Ethan's throat tight. 15 years of life contained in one small bag. The car ride home was thick with awkward silence. Ethan tried several times to start a conversation, his voice sounding too loud in the quiet car. "Do you like music?" he asked. No response. "Are you hungry? We could stop somewhere." Sophia just shook her head, keeping her eyes fixed on the passing scenery, her breath occasionally fogging the window. Through the side mirror, she watched him. Ethan's fingers drummed nervously on the steering wheel, betraying his anxiety. The houses they passed grew larger and more spread out until they turned onto a tree-lined street, fallen leaves dancing across their path. "This is it," Ethan said, pulling into the driveway of a large 2-story house. It looked welcoming enough from the outside. Neat flower beds, fresh paint, a swing on the front porch that creaked gently in the breeze. But something felt off. The windows were dark and the air inside hit them like a wall of stillness when Ethan opened the front door, bringing with it the faint smell of dust and emptiness. Sophia had barely stepped inside when a loud slam echoed through the house. She looked up toward the hallway just in time to see a bedroom door shut with such force that the walls seemed to shake. A picture frame on the wall rattled in response. Ethan's shoulders slumped as he rubbed his temples, the gesture speaking of long-practiced weariness. "Welcome home," he said quietly. Sophia's fingers tightened around the strap of her duffel bag until her knuckles turned white. The word home hung in the air, feeling as empty as the silence that surrounded them, broken only by the distant ticking of another clock counting away the seconds. Sophia stood in the doorway of her new bedroom, her worn duffel bag heavy in her hands. The room felt frozen in time, soft yellow walls that hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint in years, white curtains that looked brand new and untouched, and a delicate mobile hanging above where a crib should be. Tiny fabric stars and moons swayed slightly in the air-conditioning breeze. Her eyes caught the edge of something in the closet, and her stomach dropped. There it was, a white crib, partially hidden behind cardboard boxes covered in a thin layer of dust. "We planned for another child," Ethan's voice came from behind her, quiet and strained. He lingered awkwardly in the hallway, not quite entering the room, one hand resting against the doorframe. Sophia nodded without turning around, her throat tight. She understood what he wasn't saying. A baby that never arrived. Dreams carefully packed away in boxes like precious china. The oak dresser had 6 drawers, but Sophia only opened one, the wood creaking slightly under her touch. Her clothes barely filled half of it. A few well-worn t-shirts, 2 pairs of faded jeans, some mismatched socks. She'd learned to pack light over the years, a survival skill earned the hard way. No point in spreading out when you might need to leave quickly, something she knew all too well. At dinner, the kitchen felt like it was holding its breath, tension hanging thick in the air. Forks clinked against plates in a rhythm that felt too loud, each sound making Sophia wince slightly. Ethan tried his best, asking Sophia about her favorite subjects in school, if she liked the homemade lasagna he'd prepared. She gave short, careful answers, watching Lily from the corner of her eye while pushing a piece of pasta around her plate. Lily hadn't looked up once during the entire meal. Her fork pushed food around her plate in methodical circles, creating intricate patterns, but never lifting to her mouth. The wheelchair was positioned slightly away from the table, angled toward the exit like she was ready to escape at any moment. Wheels already turned toward freedom. "Sophia." Ethan's voice broke through the silence again, his fingers nervously tapping against his water glass. "I should probably tell you about what happened." "Dad." Lily's voice cut through the air like ice, sharp enough to make Sophia flinch. It was the first word she'd spoken all evening, loaded with warning. Ethan continued anyway, his voice gentle but firm, shoulders squared with determination. 2 years ago, there was an accident. Lily's mother, my wife, she didn't... He swallowed hard, Adam's apple bobbing. Lily was injured. The doctor said she wouldn't walk again. Sophia kept her eyes fixed on her plate, pushing a piece of garlic bread into the sauce, but she could feel Lily's anger radiating across the table like a physical force. The sudden screech of wheelchair wheels against tile made everyone jump. Lily pushed herself away from the table with practiced movements and disappeared down the hall, the sound of her retreat echoing off the walls. The slam of her bedroom door reverberated through the house like a gunshot. Later that night, Sophia turned the lock on her bedroom door with practiced fingers, a ritual she'd performed in countless foster homes. The click was familiar, a sound that meant safety, or at least the illusion of it, a barrier between her and whatever waited on the other side. Through the wall, she could hear the soft whirring of Lily's wheelchair moving down the hallway. Back and forth, like a caged animal pacing its enclosure. In her own room, Lily lay in bed staring up at the ceiling she'd memorized over countless sleepless nights, counting the tiny cracks in the paint for the 1,000th time. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides, knuckles white with tension, nails digging half moons into her palms. "This girl," she whispered to the darkness, her voice trembling with barely contained emotion. "This stranger, thinks she understands pain?" The words tasted bitter in her mouth, like medicine she couldn't swallow. The house seemed to hold its breath like a pot about to boil over, steam building beneath the surface. 3 people under one roof, each carrying their own weight of loss, each locked behind their own carefully constructed walls. The night stretched on, heavy with things unsaid, secrets and sorrows hanging in the air like invisible cobwebs. The morning sun crept through the kitchen windows, casting long shadows across the tile floor. Sophia padded into the kitchen, her bare feet silent against the cool surface. The rich aroma of coffee filled the air, but the warmth of the smell contrasted sharply with the coldness of the room's atmosphere. A clock ticked steadily on the wall, marking each uncomfortable second. Ethan sat at the kitchen table, both hands wrapped around his coffee mug as if seeking comfort from its warmth. His tired eyes brightened slightly when he saw Sophia, though the dark circles beneath them betrayed his sleepless night. "Good morning," he said, his voice gentle and hopeful. "Would you like some breakfast? We have cereal, or I could make eggs. There's fresh orange juice, too." At the other end of the table, Lily sat in her wheelchair, her head bent over a bowl of untouched cereal. The milk had started to turn warm, but she kept stirring it mindlessly with her spoon. She didn't look up when Sophia entered, didn't acknowledge her presence at all, her shoulders rigid with tension. Sophia pulled out a chair, its legs scraping against the floor. The sound felt too loud in the quiet kitchen, making her wince slightly. "Cereal is fine," she said, watching as Ethan quickly got up to fetch her a bowl, his movements betraying an eagerness to be helpful. The silence stretched on, broken only by the clink of spoons against bowls and Ethan's occasional attempts at conversation. His voice carried a forced cheerfulness that made everything feel more awkward. "Did you sleep well, Sophia? Is the room comfortable enough? I put fresh sheets on the bed yesterday." "It's fine," Sophia replied, her eyes fixed on Lily, who continued to ignore her completely, methodically pushing her cereal from one side of the bowl to the other. Something inside Sophia snapped. 2 years in the Thompson house had taught her that being ignored meant eventually being forgotten, being erased until she disappeared completely. She wouldn't let that happen again. "Are you mute or just ignoring me?" she demanded, staring directly at Lily, her spoon clattering against her bowl. For the first time that morning, Lily's head snapped up. Her eyes were cold and hard as steel, burning with a fury that seemed to freeze the air between them. "I'm ignoring you," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Get used to it." Ethan's shoulders slumped. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 seconds, his hand trembling slightly as he set down his coffee mug. After breakfast, Sophia wandered through the house, taking in her new surroundings. The walls were lined with photos, happy moments frozen in time. The hardwood floors creaked softly under her feet as she moved from frame to frame. She paused at one that showed a younger Lily in track clothes, beaming as she held up a gold medal. The girl in the photo radiated joy and determination, her eyes bright with victory and promise. "What do you think you're doing?" Lily's voice cracked like a whip behind her, the soft whir of her wheelchair wheels accompanying her approach. Sophia turned to face her, standing her ground. "Looking at pictures, is that against the rules?" Her voice remained steady, though her heart pounded in her chest. "Those aren't yours to look at," Lily snarled, wheeling closer until they were barely feet apart. "You don't belong here. You don't get to pretend like you're part of this family." "I'm not pretending anything," Sophia shot back, lifting her chin defiantly. "Your dad adopted me. That makes you nothing." Lily's voice rose to a shout, echoing off the walls. "You're just some charity case he brought home because he feels guilty." "Lily!" Ethan appeared in the hallway, his face pale and stricken. "That's enough." But Lily was already wheeling away, the force of her movements making the wheelchair bump against the wall as she turned the corner. She left Sophia standing there, her fists clenched at her sides, nails digging into her palms. She'd been through too much, survived too many homes and too many rejections to let Lily's words break her now. She looked at Ethan, who seemed torn between following his daughter and staying to comfort her, his body half turned in the direction Lily had gone. "I'm fine," she said firmly, squaring her shoulders. "She doesn't scare me." The war had been declared. but Sophia had fought battles before. She'd weathered worse storms than Lily's anger. She wasn't going anywhere, no matter how hard the other girl pushed. The mid-morning light filtered through the living room windows, casting a gentle glow on the dust particles floating lazily in the air. Sophia's footsteps were quiet against the hardwood floor as she wandered through the space, taking in every detail of what was supposed to be her new home. Her eyes drifted across the bookshelves, scanning titles and trinkets until they landed on a single photograph that made her pause mid-step. The image showed a younger Lily, her body stretched forward in perfect form as she broke through a finish line ribbon. Her face was radiant with joy, sweat glistening on her forehead, and her eyes blazed with triumph. The camera had captured that perfect moment of victory. Sophia picked up the frame, studying it closer, noting the determined set of Lily's jaw and the powerful stride. This wasn't just a casual runner. This was someone who lived for the race, who breathed competition. Curiosity drew her to a thick photo album lying nearby, its corners worn from frequent handling. She settled onto the couch and began turning pages, each one crackling with age. Each photograph told a story of dedication. Lily training in the rain, her hair plastered to her face, accepting medals with tears in her eyes, standing proud on podiums surrounded by defeated competitors. Trophies still lined the upper shelves, though a thin layer of dust suggested they hadn't been touched in years. In a corner, partially hidden behind some books as if someone had tried to make them disappear, several medals hung forgotten and tarnished. The soft whir of wheels made Sophia look up sharply. Lily had entered the room, and her face transformed from surprise to pure rage when she saw what Sophia was holding. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees and the air grew thick with tension. "Put that down," Lily demanded, her voice sharp as ice, each word precisely aimed. "Those aren't yours to look at." Sophia met her gaze steadily, refusing to be intimidated. "I didn't know you were a runner." "Yeah? Well, I'm not anymore." Lily's words came out like bullets, hard and fast. Her hands gripped her wheelchair's arms so tightly her knuckles turned white, the metal creaking under her grip. Sophia didn't flinch. Instead, she stood up, still holding the photo like a challenge. "Maybe if you stopped feeling sorry for yourself, you still could be." The words hit like a slap. Lily's face flushed red, the color creeping up her neck to her cheeks. "How dare you? You don't know anything about me or what I've been through." "I know enough to see someone who's given up," Sophia shot back, her chin lifted in defiance. "Get out!" Lily screamed, wheeling forward aggressively. "You have no right to come into my house and judge me." "This is my house now too," Sophia yelled back, her voice rising to match Lily's. "And unlike you, I'm not afraid to face reality." The sound of running footsteps preceded Ethan's arrival. He burst into the room, his face etched with worry and exhaustion. "What's going on here?" "She's going through my things," Lily pointed accusingly at Sophia, her finger trembling with rage. "She's living in the past," Sophia countered, waving the photo like evidence in a trial. "Enough!" Ethan's voice cut through their argument like a knife. "Both of you, just stop." Sophia threw the photo album onto the couch with deliberate force and stormed out of the room, her footsteps thundering down the hallway. The slam of her bedroom door echoed through the house like a gunshot, making the walls shake. In the living room, Lily sat motionless in her wheelchair, staring at the scattered photos on the floor, each one a reminder of what she'd lost. With trembling hands, she picked up the fallen picture of herself crossing the finish line. Her younger self smiled back at her, full of dreams and determination, completely unaware of what the future held. The sight of it made her stomach twist with hatred. Hatred for Sophia, for her intrusion, for her judgment. But deeper than that burned a darker hatred. Hatred for the girl in the photo, for everything she used to be, for the life she'd taken for granted, everything she could never be again. The frame shook in her grip as tears threatened to fall. The night wrapped the house in a heavy blanket of silence. Sophia lay in her bed, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling, counting the shadows that danced across it from the trees outside. That's when she heard it, a soft, muffled sound that made her sit up straight. Through the thin walls came the unmistakable sound of someone crying. Sophia slipped out of bed, her bare feet silent against the cool floor. Her old t-shirt hung loose around her shoulders as she moved carefully through the darkness. The hallway was dark, lit only by a thin strip of moonlight from a window, casting long shadows on the walls. The crying grew clearer as she approached Lily's room, each sob more distinct than the last. She stopped at the closed door, her hand hovering over the doorknob, uncertainty making her fingers tremble. "I hate this," Lily's voice cracked through her sobs. "I hate myself." The words were followed by a sound that seemed to come from somewhere deep and broken. Sophia's fingers wrapped around the doorknob, the metal cold against her palm. Her heart pounded in her chest so hard she worried Lily might hear it through the door. For a moment, she thought about turning it, about walking in and… what? What could she possibly say that wouldn't sound hollow or make things worse? She released her grip and slid down to sit on the floor instead, her back against the wall beside Lily's door. The wooden floor was hard and uncomfortable, pressing against her tailbone. But Sophia didn't move. She drew her knees up to her chest and listened, her chin resting on her arms. Lily's sobs continued, each one hitting Sophia like a physical weight, making her own chest ache in response. She'd heard crying in foster homes before, plenty of it. The attention-seeking wails, the manipulative tears, the tantrums. But this was different. This wasn't the crying of someone who wanted attention or sympathy. This was raw pain, the kind that only came out in the dark when you thought no one could hear, when the weight of everything became too much to carry alone. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Sophia's legs started to cramp, pins and needles dancing up her calves, but she stayed put. Her eyes adjusted to the darkness, picking out the subtle patterns in the hallway wallpaper. Gradually, Lily's sobs quieted to sniffles, then to shaky breaths, and finally to silence. The quiet that followed wasn't like the tense silence from dinner, or the angry silence from their fight. It was different, almost peaceful, like the calm after a storm. Inside the room, Lily lay in her bed, fully aware of the presence outside her door. She could see Sophia's shadow underneath, cast by the moonlight, steady and unwavering. Any other night, she would have yelled, thrown something at the door, demanded to be left alone. But tonight, she didn't. Maybe she was too tired, her energy drained by the tears. Maybe she just didn't have any fight left in her. Or maybe, just maybe, it felt okay to let someone be there, to share this moment of vulnerability with another soul who understood what it meant to be broken. Sophia's eyes grew heavy, but she forced them to stay open, blinking hard against the exhaustion. She heard Lily shifting in her bed, the soft squeak of springs and the rustle of blankets. Still, neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. Sometimes just knowing someone was there was enough, a silent witness to your pain who chose to stay. Finally, Sophia's legs couldn't take it anymore. She stood up slowly, careful not to make any sudden noises. Her joints popped as she straightened, and she winced at the sound that seemed too loud in the quiet hallway. Without a word, she padded back to her room, each step measured and soft, leaving Lily alone but not lonely. Lily stared up at her ceiling, listening to Sophia's retreating footsteps grow fainter. The tears on her cheeks had dried, leaving salty tracks she didn't bother to wipe away. Her breath came easier now, steadier. For the first time since the accident, the weight of solitude felt just a little bit lighter. Someone had heard her pain and chosen to stay. Not to fix it, not to judge it, just to acknowledge it existed. And somehow that made all the difference in the world. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the living room window where Lily sat, her wheelchair positioned to catch the warmth on her face. Her fingers drummed an aimless rhythm on the armrest, a habit she'd developed to keep her hands busy when her mind wandered to darker places. Outside, leaves danced in the breeze, and birds soared freely through the sky. Everything moved except her. She watched a cardinal hop from branch to branch, its bright red feathers a stark contrast against the pale blue sky, and felt the familiar ache of envy deep in her chest. The sound of determined footsteps broke her trance. Sophia marched into the room, clutching a tablet to her chest, with purpose in her stride, her sneakers squeaking against the hardwood floor. Without ceremony or permission, she stepped in front of Lily and placed the device in her lap, blocking her view of the window. "What are you doing?" Lily asked, her voice sharp with annoyance. She tried to shift the tablet away, but Sophia's hand kept it firmly in place. Sophia didn't answer. Instead, she pressed play on a video that filled the screen. The image showed a racetrack, lined with spectators cheering and waving signs. Among the competitors was Sophia herself, seated in a specialized racing wheelchair, her face set with fierce concentration as she leaned into each push of the wheels. Lily's eyes widened slightly before narrowing again. "What is this?" she demanded, but couldn't help watching as Sophia in the video powered forward, her arms moving with practiced precision, muscles flexing with each determined motion. "This is me," Sophia said simply, crossing her arms and lifting her chin. "I ran because I had to fight for it, and you can fight too." Her words carried the weight of someone who knew exactly what that fight meant. The words hit Lily like a physical blow, her hands clenched into fists, knuckles turning white. "I can't!" The words exploded from her, raw and painful, echoing off the walls. Sophia didn't even flinch at the outburst. Her voice remained steady as she said, "Then let me run for you." She stood her ground, feet planted firmly on the floor. A bitter laugh escaped Lily's throat. "Go ahead. Knock yourself out." She tried to inject as much venom into the words as possible, hoping Sophia would finally leave her alone. Her fingers resumed their nervous drumming, faster now. But Sophia planted her feet firmly, her expression unchanged, strong and immovable as a mountain. "I will, but you're coming with me." The laughter died in Lily's throat. "Excuse me? I'm running this marathon for you," Sophia declared, her eyes locked on Lily's, burning with determination. "And you're coming with me." Lily stared at her new housemate, completely thrown off balance by the sheer audacity of the statement. This girl, this stranger who'd invaded her home, was standing there making impossible promises and even more impossible demands. The video continued to play silently in her lap, a constant reminder of what she'd lost. "This is a joke," Lily said, shaking her head and turning away from Sophia's intense gaze. Her throat felt tight with unshed tears. Sophia leaned in, her voice low and determined, close enough that Lily could see the tiny flecks of gold in her brown eyes. "No, it's a challenge." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with promise and possibility. The evening light filtered through the curtains as Lily wheeled herself into the living room, her jaw set with determination. She found Ethan and Sophia deep in conversation on the couch, their heads bent together as they discussed something in hushed tones. The sight made her stomach clench with an uncomfortable mix of jealousy and loneliness, but she pushed the feeling aside, focusing instead on the decision she'd spent hours wrestling with in her room. "Fine," Lily announced, breaking into their conversation with more confidence than she felt. "I'll play your stupid game." Sophia's head snapped up, her eyebrow raising in surprise. "Oh?" The single word carried a hint of challenge that made Lily's competitive spirit stir. "You heard me." Lily's voice was steady, masking the tremor in her hands. She gripped her wheelchair's armrests tighter to hide it, her knuckles turning white with the effort. Ethan sat up straighter, his eyes darting between the two girls. The tension in the room was electric, crackling with possibility and unspoken challenges. "You want to run for me?" Lily continued, her voice taking on an edge she hadn't used since before the accident. The familiar tone felt both foreign and right on her tongue. "Then prove it." A smirk played at the corners of Sophia's mouth. "And how do I do that?" Lily leaned forward in her chair, her eyes sharp and focused. The movement was deliberate, calculated, the same way she used to size up her competition before a race. "You need a coach. If you're such a great athlete, let's see if you can take real training." Sophia's confidence wavered for just a moment, a slight hesitation that Lily caught immediately, like a predator spotting weakness. But then Sophia's chin lifted and she nodded firmly. "Deal." Ethan remained frozen on the couch, hardly daring to breathe. He hadn't seen this spark in Lily since before the accident, this fierce competitive light in her eyes that used to drive her to victory after victory. His heart ached with both hope and fear. 6 a.m. tomorrow, Lily said, her voice clipped and professional. She was already slipping into coach mode, a role that felt surprisingly natural. "We'll start with basic endurance assessment. I need to know what I'm working with." Sophia's eyes widened slightly at the early hour, but she didn't protest. A determined glint appeared in her expression. "I'll be ready." "You'd better be." Lily's fingers tapped against her armrest, not nervously now, but with purpose, like she was already mapping out training schedules in her head. The familiar rhythm of planning workouts came back to her like muscle memory. "Because I don't waste my time on people who can't keep up." "Trust me," Sophia shot back, leaning forward with a challenging grin. "Keeping up won't be a problem." Lily narrowed her eyes, studying Sophia with the calculated gaze of a seasoned athlete. She took in every detail: Sophia's confident posture, the lean muscle in her arms, the fire in her eyes. "You won't last a week." Sophia's smirk grew wider. "Watch me." Ethan exhaled slowly, his heart pounding with cautious hope. For the first time in 2 years, he saw something in Lily's eyes besides pain and anger. He saw purpose. The battle lines were drawn, and whether either girl realized it or not, something significant had just shifted in their household. The air hummed with possibility, with the promise of change that could either heal or hurt. But at least it was movement, at last, after so long standing still. The morning air was crisp and cool as Sophia stood outside Lily's bedroom door, her new running shoes squeaking against the hardwood floor. Her breath came out in small, visible puffs in the chilly air. She knocked sharply 3 times. "Rise and shine, coach," she called out, bouncing on her toes to stay warm, the floorboards creaking beneath her. Inside her room, Lily pulled her blanket over her head and groaned, burrowing deeper into the warmth of her bed. She had hoped, really hoped, that Sophia was just talking big yesterday. But the persistent knocking continued, each rap against the wood making her sink further into irritation. "Go away," Lily mumbled into her pillow, though not loud enough for Sophia to hear through the door. "Come on, coach. You said you'd train me." Sophia's voice was irritatingly cheerful for 6 in the morning, echoing down the quiet hallway. Lily sat up in her wheelchair, glaring at the door, her hair disheveled from sleep. She hadn't actually agreed to train anyone. She'd just challenged Sophia to prove herself. There was a difference, and Sophia knew it. The rich smell of coffee drifted up from downstairs, carrying promises of warmth and caffeine. Ethan was already in the kitchen when Sophia bounded in, doing arm stretches as she walked, her enthusiasm filling the quiet morning space. "Morning," Sophia chirped. Ethan raised his eyebrows but said nothing, watching as she grabbed a water bottle from the fridge, the door closing with a soft thud. "Lily's not coming down?" he asked quietly, concern evident in his voice. Sophia shrugged, adjusting her ponytail. "Her loss. I'm going to train anyway." The track near their house was empty at this hour, the morning dew still clinging to the grass. Sophia started with basic stretches, her movements awkward and unpracticed, clearly showing her inexperience. From her bedroom window, Lily watched, arms crossed tightly over her chest, her fingers drumming against her arm. Sophia's running form was terrible. Her arms swung too wide, her steps were uneven, and she was already breathing hard after just 2 laps, her shoulders hunched with effort. "Amateur," Lily muttered, shaking her head in disapproval. She could spot at least 5 major problems with Sophia's stance alone, each one making her cringe internally. Sophia stumbled slightly on a turn, catching herself before she fell, her arms windmilling for balance. Lily felt her heart jump for a split second before she squashed the feeling. "Told you," she said to no one, but her eyes never left the window, tracking every misstep. On the back porch, Ethan stood watching both his daughters, one struggling on the track, the other pretending not to care. He sipped his coffee slowly, the steam rising in the cool morning air, hoping this wasn't going to end in disaster. After 45 minutes, Sophia dragged herself back inside, her footsteps heavy on the stairs. Her hair was plastered to her forehead with sweat, and her chest heaved with each breath, her face flushed bright red. She collapsed onto a kitchen chair, gulping water like she'd just crossed a desert. Lily wheeled herself into the kitchen, eyebrow raised at the display. "You look like you barely survived," she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm, though her eyes lingered on Sophia's determined expression. Sophia wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and managed a breathless smirk, still trying to catch her breath. "And yet, I'll be back tomorrow." Lily rolled her eyes but didn't argue. She just turned around and wheeled herself back to her room, leaving Sophia still catching her breath at the kitchen table, the sound of her wheels fading down the hallway. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the backyard as Sophia stretched her muscles, preparing for another training session. A light breeze rustled through the trees, carrying the fresh scent of dew-dampened grass. From her window, Lily watched, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her foot tapped rhythmically against the floor, an old habit from her running days that she refused to acknowledge, though the familiar motion brought an unwelcome comfort. Ethan paused as he walked past Lily's room, noticing her intense focus on Sophia's warm-up routine. The steam from his morning coffee curled up into the air between them. "You could help her, you know," he said softly, careful to keep his tone neutral. Lily scoffed, not taking her eyes off Sophia. "She won't listen anyway." Her fingers gripped her arms tighter, knuckles whitening slightly. Outside, Sophia started her run, and Lily's frown deepened. The girl's form was terrible, arms swinging wildly, shoulders hunched, feet landing all wrong. But she was lasting longer than yesterday, pushing through the fatigue that had stopped her before. Each determined stride, though clumsy, showed a fighter's spirit. Lily's fingers drummed against her wheelchair's armrest, the steady tap, tap, tap matching Sophia's footfalls. Finally, unable to take it anymore, she rolled toward the door. The morning air hit her face as she emerged onto the porch, bringing with it memories of countless training sessions from what felt like a lifetime ago. "You're running like a toddler," Lily called out, her voice sharp enough to cut through the morning quiet. "Stand straight." Sophia's face broke into a wide grin as she jogged past, sweat already beginning to glisten on her forehead. "Oh? So you are coaching me?" "Don't get excited," Lily glared but continued anyway, her old coach's instincts taking over despite herself. "You're wasting energy flailing around like that. Keep your arms at 90 degrees, close to your body." To Lily's surprise, Sophia immediately adjusted her form, following the instruction without argument or attitude. As Sophia made another lap, Lily found herself leaning forward in her wheelchair, her body instinctively moving with the rhythm of Sophia's stride. The familiar motion sent a bittersweet ache through her chest. "Better," Lily muttered, mostly to herself, her expert eye catching every minor improvement. "Now watch your breathing pattern." From his spot on the porch, Ethan watched the scene unfold, hiding a small smile behind his coffee mug. It had been 2 years since he'd seen Lily this engaged in anything. The sight made his heart both lighter and heavier at the same time. Sophia continued running, her form improving with each lap. She was still struggling, but there was determination in every step, every labored breath. Lily kept calling out corrections, her voice growing more confident with each instruction, falling naturally into the role she'd thought forever lost to her. Finally, Sophia jogged back to the house, her face flushed and chest heaving. She bent over, hands on her knees, catching her breath. The morning sun highlighted the sheen of sweat on her face and the trembling in her legs. Lily studied her for a moment before speaking. "You still look like you're dying," she said, then added almost reluctantly, her voice softer than before. "But maybe less than yesterday." Sophia's exhausted face lit up with a grin, bright despite her fatigue. "I'll take it." For the briefest moment, the corner of Lily's mouth twitched upward, not quite a smile, but the closest thing to it in months. Something shifted in the morning air between them, subtle but undeniable. The morning sun beat down mercilessly on the track as Sophia pushed through her drills, her feet pounding against the rubber surface with determined intensity. Her form was better than before, showing signs of improvement, but still far from perfect. Inside the house, Lily sat by the window, her eyes fixed on Sophia's every movement, scrutinizing each step with the keen eye of an experienced runner. Her fingers gripped the wheelchair's armrests tightly, knuckles turning white with tension. No, you're doing it all wrong," Lily muttered under her breath, shaking her head in frustration. She watched as Sophia's shoulders hunched forward, her stride becoming increasingly uneven with each lap. "Your posture is terrible. You're going to hurt yourself running like that." Without conscious thought, Lily wheeled herself toward the front door, the familiar urge to coach overwhelming her usual reluctance to go outside. The familiar squeak of her wheels caught Ethan's attention as he worked in his home office, surrounded by stacks of papers. He looked up, surprised and hopeful to see his daughter heading outside voluntarily for the first time in weeks. "Hey!" Lily's sharp voice cut through the morning air like a knife. Sophia stumbled slightly, startled by the unexpected company, her rhythm momentarily broken. "Your form is falling apart. Straighten your back before you strain something." Sophia immediately adjusted her posture, her breathing heavy but controlled as she fought to maintain her pace. "Like this?" she called back, determination evident in her voice. "Better," Lily called out, wheeling closer to the track, her competitive instincts taking over. "Now focus on your breathing, in through your nose, out through your mouth. Time it with your steps, make it natural." Sophia nodded earnestly, following the instructions with careful attention. Her stride became smoother, more controlled, as she implemented each correction. Lily's eyes narrowed as she analyzed every movement, every subtle shift in form. "You're still landing too hard on your heels," Lily continued, her voice taking on the familiar tone of authority she'd used years ago as team captain when she'd led her relay team to 3 straight state championships. "Mid-foot strike, roll through to your toes, it'll save your knees in the long run. Trust me on this." From the porch, Ethan watched silently, a small smile playing at his lips as hope bloomed in his chest. He hadn't seen Lily this engaged in months, maybe years. Her whole body leaned forward in her chair as she demonstrated the proper arm movement, muscle memory taking over despite her paralysis. "Now pick up the pace," Lily instructed, unconsciously mimicking the running motion with her upper body, her hands cutting through the air. "Push through the last 100 meters. Don't you dare slow down. This is where champions are made." Sophia gritted her teeth, driving her legs harder against the track, the sound of her footfalls echoing in the morning air. Her form held steady, exactly as Lily had shown her, each stride powerful and precise. As she crossed the finish line, she doubled over, hands on her knees, gasping for air in the hot morning sun. That ... Sophia panted, struggling to catch her breath. "Was actually better, wasn't it? I could feel the difference." Lily nodded reluctantly, unable to completely hide her satisfaction with Sophia's improvement. "Your endurance is improving, but your sprint finish needs work. A lot of work." Sophia straightened up, wiping streams of sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. She studied Lily for a moment, noting how her adoptive sister's body was still positioned like a runner's, leaning forward, ready for action, as if any moment she might spring from the chair and take off down the track. "You ever thought about racing again?" Sophia asked casually, though her eyes were watchful and intent. The words hit Lily like a physical blow, stealing her breath away. Her body stiffened, the familiar spark in her eyes instantly extinguished, replaced by a haunted look. The question hung heavy in the air between them, loaded with unspoken meaning and painful memories. Without waiting for a response, Sophia shrugged and walked toward the house, her footsteps crunching on the gravel path, leaving Lily alone on the track. Lily sat motionless in her wheelchair, her heart hammering in her chest as she stared at the familiar lanes stretching out before her. The track she'd once owned, where she'd broken records and collected medals. The track she'd never thought she'd see again, much less return to as a coach instead of a runner. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the driveway as Sophia wheeled something out of Ethan's garage. Lily, who had been watching from her usual spot by the window, felt her breath catch in her throat. The sleek racing wheelchair gleamed in the sunlight, its specialized design unmistakable. The carbon fiber frame caught the light, making it look almost alive. Sophia positioned it next to her with a knowing smile, her fingers trailing along the aerodynamic curves. "You ever tried one?" Lily's hands clenched into fists on her armrests, her knuckles turning white. Her regular wheelchair suddenly felt heavier, more confining, like a cage rather than a means of movement. "I don't need your pity," she spat, but her voice trembled slightly, betraying the emotion she tried to hide. Sophia didn't argue. Instead, she smoothly transferred herself into the racing chair with practiced ease. "This isn't pity," she said, adjusting her position and checking the straps with familiar movements. "It's power." With practiced movements, she gripped the wheels and pushed forward. Lily's eyes widened as Sophia took off down the track. The chair moved like it was part of her, swift and graceful, barely making a sound on the pavement. Sophia's arms pumped rhythmically, her body leaning forward with perfect form, every movement precise and purposeful. The wheels barely seemed to touch the ground as she flew past, her face lit up with pure joy, hair streaming behind her. Through the kitchen window, Ethan watched the scene unfold, his coffee growing cold in his hands. His hand twitched, wanting to encourage Lily, but he held back. This had to be her choice, her moment to decide. Sophia made another lap, the chair responding to her every command like an extension of her body. She wasn't just moving, she was racing, competing, flying. Lily found herself leaning forward, following Sophia's movements with her eyes, her breath quickening with each turn. The chair didn't look like a medical device anymore. It looked like freedom. "Want to give it a try?" Sophia asked, coming to a stop nearby. Sweat glistened on her forehead and her chest rose and fell with exertion, but her eyes sparkled with challenge and something else, understanding. Lily's throat felt tight, constricting around words she couldn't form. She looked at the racing chair, then down at her own wheelchair, seeing it with new eyes. Her hands gripped her armrests so hard they hurt, leaving impressions in her palms. "No," she said finally, but her voice lacked its usual bitter edge, replaced by uncertainty. Sophia shrugged, not pushing the issue. "Okay, but the offer stands." She wheeled the racing chair back toward the garage, leaving Lily alone with her thoughts and the echo of wheels on pavement. That evening, Lily sat in front of her bathroom mirror, staring at her reflection in the harsh fluorescent light. Her eyes drifted down to her legs, the legs that had once carried her across finish lines, that had once felt the burn of victory. She touched them gently, remembering the feeling of running, of competing, of winning. The memories were still sharp, still painful, but somehow different now. "What if?" she whispered to her reflection, the words barely audible even to herself. The words hung in the air, both frightening and thrilling, like standing at the starting line before a race. For the first time in 2 years, she allowed herself to imagine something different, something possible, something that made her heart race just a little faster. The late morning sun beat down mercilessly on the track as Lily sat in her wheelchair, arms firmly crossed over her chest. Her eyes tracked Sophia's every movement as the girl struggled through another sprint, the rubber surface of the track radiating heat waves that distorted the air around them. Each misstep, every awkward motion made Lily's jaw clench tighter, her fingers digging into her arms. "You're sloppy," she called out, her voice carrying a sharp edge that cut through the humid air. "You run like you're afraid to fall, like every step might be your last." Sophia skidded to a stop, her chest heaving as she tried to catch her breath. Sweat dripped down her face and neck, darkening the collar of her t-shirt as she turned to face Lily. "You say that like it's a bad thing." Lily narrowed her eyes, memories of her own training flooding back, countless hours spent perfecting each stride, each breath. "It is. Fear makes you hesitate. Hesitation makes you slow. Slow gets you nowhere, and nowhere isn't where you want to be." Sophia nodded, wiping her forehead with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of dirt across her skin. She returned to the starting position, determination etched across her features. But as she pushed forward again, her movements remained uncontrolled, almost frantic. Her shoulders hunched forward like a turtle retreating into its shell, her steps uneven and wasteful, each one burning precious energy. Lily felt her irritation rising, a familiar heat in her chest that had nothing to do with the sun. The athlete in her couldn't stand watching such poor form. It was like nails on a chalkboard. "You're not controlling your breath," she called out, leaning forward in her chair until her seatbelt dug into her waist. "And your shoulders are too tight. You're fighting yourself. Every step is a battle you're losing." Sophia gritted her teeth, pushing harder, determination written in every line of her body. But her body betrayed her efforts. Her foot caught on the track's surface, sending her stumbling forward in an ungraceful lurch. She barely caught herself before hitting the ground, her arms windmilling wildly. Something snapped inside Lily like a dam breaking. 2 years of stored coaching knowledge burst through her carefully constructed walls, flowing out before she could stop it. "Stop," she commanded, her voice ringing with authority. "Your whole stance is wrong. Your core isn't engaged, and you're letting your arms swing wild like you're trying to take flight." To Lily's surprise, Sophia didn't argue back or throw one of her typical smart remarks. Instead, she stood still, hands on her knees, listening intently as Lily continued, "Keep your shoulders down, like you're trying to put them in your back pockets. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. Control it. Make every breath count." Sophia reset her position, following Lily's instructions with unusual focus. Her next attempt wasn't perfect, but her form improved slightly, becoming more fluid, more intentional. Each correction Lily gave, Sophia absorbed and tried to implement, like a sponge soaking up water in the desert. When Sophia finally finished her sprint, her legs were trembling from exhaustion, barely holding her up. She turned to Lily, wiping sweat from her eyes with a shaking hand. "So, am I improving?" The question held none of her usual sass. Lily exhaled sharply, feeling the familiar weight of a coach's responsibility. The words stuck in her throat for a moment, like they'd forgotten how to come out. She didn't want to admit it, but found herself nodding anyway, the motion almost involuntary. A grin spread across Sophia's face, bright enough to rival the sun overhead. "Thought so." For the first time since Sophia had arrived, Lily didn't roll her eyes in response or try to squash the girl's enthusiasm. Instead, she sat there, feeling the familiar spark of coaching ignite something she thought she'd lost forever. A sense of purpose, a reason to keep going. It was tiny, barely more than an ember, but it was there. Thunder rumbled overhead as Sophia stood by the window, pulling her hair into a tight ponytail. Dark clouds rolled across the sky, heavy with rain. She bent down to double knot her shoelaces, determination written across her face. Her fingers worked quickly, making sure the laces were secure, a habit from years of training. "Guess we'll be running in the rain today," she announced, glancing at Lily, who sat in her wheelchair near the kitchen table, absently pushing around the remains of her breakfast with a fork. Lily let out a dismissive snort. "Guess again." Her eyes tracked the threatening clouds through the window, following a particularly dark mass as it crept closer. Only an idiot would train in this weather. Before Sophia could argue, the sky cracked open with a deafening boom. Rain pounded against the windows in heavy sheets, turning the world outside into a gray blur. The wind picked up, whipping tree branches back and forth like angry dancers. Ethan walked into the kitchen, coffee mug in hand, his shoulders tense from another restless night. "Looks like Mother Nature made the decision for us." He took a long sip of his coffee, watching both girls with concern. "Maybe take a rest day?" "No way," Sophia said, pulling out her phone. She settled onto the couch, propping her feet up on the coffee table. "I can still study." Her fingers moved quickly across the screen as she pulled up old race footage, the determination never leaving her face. Lily rolled her wheelchair closer, curiosity getting the better of her despite herself. The sound of cheering crowds and the sharp crack of a starting pistol filled the room, bringing with it a rush of memories. Lily leaned in slightly, then froze. Her own face stared back from the screen, younger and full of life. There she was, 2 years younger, muscles taut at the starting line. Her old self bounced lightly on her toes, focused and ready, her competition uniform gleaming in the sun. The camera followed her as she exploded forward at the gun, her form perfect, each stride powerful and precise like a well-oiled machine. "Turn it off." Lily's voice came out strangled, barely above a whisper. When Sophia didn't move, she snapped louder, her words sharp with panic. "I said turn it off." Sophia held the phone steady, her jaw set stubbornly. "Why? Because you don't even want to remember who you used to be? That girl is still part of you, Lily. You have no right." Lily's hands gripped her wheelchair's wheels so hard her knuckles turned white, trembling with emotion. "You don't know anything about me. Nothing." "I know you're hiding," Sophia shot back, her voice rising to match Lily's. "I know you're scared to face who you were because you think it'll hurt too much, but running away doesn't make it better." Lily spun her chair around violently and pushed herself out of the room, her wheels squeaking against the floor. The sound of her bedroom door slamming echoed through the house like a gunshot. In her room, Lily's whole body trembled uncontrollably. The image of herself running played over and over in her mind like a cruel movie, the feeling of wind against her skin, the rhythm of her feet hitting the track, the pure joy of pushing her body to its limits. Her throat tightened painfully as memories flooded back. That girl in the video seemed like a stranger now, so confident, so strong, so whole. Lily pressed her hands against her useless legs, tears burning in her eyes as reality crashed down around her. She could almost feel the phantom sensation of muscles that used to respond to her commands. The storm raged outside her window, matching the turmoil in her heart. Thunder boomed and lightning flashed, illuminating her room in harsh bursts that cast strange shadows on the walls. But Lily barely noticed. She was lost in memories of who she used to be, wondering if that person was truly gone forever, or if somewhere, buried deep beneath her grief and anger, that strong, determined girl still existed. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the track as Sophia adjusted her stance at the starting line. The air felt fresh and clean after yesterday's storm, carrying the sweet scent of wet grass and earth. A gentle breeze rustled through the nearby trees, cooling the sweat already forming on her brow. Lily sat in her wheelchair at the edge of the track, her fingers wrapped tightly around her wheels, watching Sophia's every move with the critical eye of a seasoned coach. Sophia took off, her feet pounding against the pavement with renewed intensity. Her form had improved over the past weeks. Her shoulders were straighter, her breathing more controlled, her movements more fluid than before. But today something was different. There was a desperate edge to her movements, a reckless determination in her eyes that spoke of something deeper than just training. "Pace yourself," Lily called out, noticing Sophia's labored breathing and the way her chest heaved with each stride. "You're pushing too hard. Think about the long game." Sophia ignored her, increasing her speed instead. Her feet slapped harder against the track, her arms pumping wildly as if she were running from something invisible. Sweat dripped down her face as she rounded the curve, but she wouldn't slow down. Couldn't slow down. Lily leaned forward in her chair, tension building in her chest as she recognized the dangerous pattern unfolding before her. "Sophia, your form is falling apart. You need to slow down. This isn't helping anyone." It happened in an instant. Sophia's foot caught on the rough pavement, her ankle twisting awkwardly beneath her weight. Time seemed to slow as she pitched forward, arms flailing helplessly in the air. Her body hit the ground with a sickening thud, skidding slightly on the track surface, the sound echoing across the empty field. Lily's breath caught in her throat, her heart pounding painfully against her ribs. Sophia lay motionless on the track, face down, her body sprawled awkwardly across the lanes. Memories flashed through Lily's mind. The screech of tires, the crunch of metal, the world spinning out of control. Her hands gripped her wheels so tightly her knuckles turned white, the metal cool beneath her trembling fingers. Then Sophia moved. Slowly, painfully, she pushed herself up onto her hands and knees, her arms shaking with the effort. Blood trickled down her leg from a nasty scrape on her knee, but her eyes remained fierce and determined, blazing with an inner fire that refused to be extinguished. She struggled to her feet, wincing but refusing to stay down, refusing to be beaten. Lily had to look away. The sight was too familiar, too raw, like looking into a mirror of her past self. She saw herself in Sophia's stubborn determination. The same drive that had pushed her to train through injuries, to ignore warning signs, to always demand more from herself. The same attitude that had cost her everything she held dear. Sophia limped over to where Lily sat, her breathing still heavy and ragged in the quiet afternoon air. Blood stained her knee, leaving dark trails down her leg, but her chin was lifted defiantly. "So, she said between breaths, wiping at the blood with her hand, leaving smeared streaks across her skin. Still think my form is sloppy? Lily swallowed hard, fighting back the emotions threatening to overwhelm her. Her throat felt tight, constricted with unspoken fears and memories. Less sloppy, she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper, rough with suppressed feeling. It wasn't much of a compliment, but coming from Lily, it meant everything. The words hung between them, heavy with understanding and shared pain. The evening settled over the house like a heavy blanket, quiet except for the soft whirring of Lily's wheelchair as she positioned herself in front of her bedroom mirror. Her reflection stared back at her, a girl she barely recognized anymore. For the first time since the accident, she didn't immediately look away. Instead, her eyes drifted down to her legs, studying them with an intensity that made her chest tight. The familiar ache of loss pressed against her ribcage, threatening to overwhelm her. She touched her thigh gently, remembering how it felt to run, to feel the muscles burning after a good sprint. The memory both hurt and called to her, like a distant echo she couldn't quite ignore anymore. She could almost feel the track beneath her feet, hear the crowd cheering, taste the victory that had once been so close within her reach. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. The door creaked open, and Ethan's reflection appeared behind her in the mirror. He stood there for a moment, taking in the sight of his daughter actually looking at herself, really looking for the first time in 2 years. His heart squeezed in his chest. Dark circles under his eyes betrayed his own sleepless nights, but hope flickered in his expression. He stepped forward carefully, like approaching a wild animal that might bolt at any sudden movement. In his hands, he held a plain manila folder, worn slightly at the edges from nervous handling. Without saying a word, he placed it gently in her lap, his fingers lingering for just a moment before pulling away. Lily's fingers brushed against the smooth surface. "What's this?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended, barely more than a whisper in the quiet room. Inside the folder, glossy pages showed images that made her breath catch. Athletes in specialized racing wheelchairs, their faces fierce with determination as they crossed finish lines. The brochure was for para-racing, filled with stories of people who refused to let their disabilities define their limits. Each page seemed to pulse with the same energy she used to feel before a race. Lily's hands trembled as she turned each page. Her throat felt tight, and she couldn't decide if she wanted to throw the folder across the room or hold it closer. Each photo seemed to challenge everything she'd told herself over the past 2 years. The athlete's eyes burned with the same fire she used to see in her own reflection. "It's not charity," Ethan said softly, his voice careful but firm. "It's a choice." He shifted his weight, hands clasped behind his back to keep from reaching out to her. Lily's jaw clenched so hard it hurt. She wanted to snap at him, to reject this outright like she'd rejected everything else. But something held her back. Maybe it was seeing Sophia run day after day, or maybe it was the familiar fire these images sparked in her chest. A feeling she thought had died in the accident. The same feeling that used to drive her to push harder, run faster, reach further. Her fingers gripped the edges of the brochure tightly, creating small creases in the paper. She didn't throw it away. She didn't push it off her lap. And that simple fact terrified her more than anything had in a long time. Her heart raced with possibilities she hadn't allowed herself to consider since the accident. The silence in the room grew thick with unspoken words and possibilities. Lily's heart pounded against her ribs as she stared at the faces of athletes who had refused to give up, athletes who had found a different way to fly. Through the window, the last rays of sunlight painted the room in soft gold, as if highlighting a new path forward. The morning sun filtered through Lily's curtains, casting a soft glow across her room. She blinked awake, momentarily confused by the weight in her lap. The para-racing brochure she'd fallen asleep studying. The glossy pages showed athletes in specialized chairs, their faces intense with concentration. Her heart jumped at the sound of footsteps approaching, and she quickly shoved the pamphlet under her blanket just as a knock echoed through the room. Sophia's head poked in. Her face lit up with an expression that made Lily instantly suspicious. Her adoptive sister's dark eyes sparkled with barely contained excitement. "Come outside," Sophia said, practically bouncing with excitement. Lily's eyes narrowed. Why? She didn't trust that look. She'd seen it before when Sophia was up to something. "You'll see." Sophia's grin widened as she winked and disappeared back into the hallway, leaving the door slightly ajar behind her. Against her better judgment, Lily followed, wheeling herself down the hall and through the front door. She stopped dead in her tracks. There, gleaming in the morning light, sat a sleek, racing wheelchair. It wasn't like her regular chair. This one was built for speed, streamlined and powerful. The frame was lightweight titanium, curved like a bullet, with angled wheels that seemed designed to slice through the air. Her throat went dry. Ethan stood nearby, his hands stuffed in his pockets, watching her reaction carefully. His expression held equal parts hope and worry. Sophia strutted over to the racing chair and patted the seat. "Ever tried one of these?" "I'm not doing this." Lily's voice came out harder than she intended, but she couldn't stop staring at the chair. It looked fast, dangerous, possible. Everything she'd been trying to convince herself she didn't want anymore. Sophia didn't argue or try to convince her. Instead, she simply slid into the racing chair herself. With practiced movements, she adjusted her position and then took off down the driveway. The wheels barely seemed to touch the ground as she flew, her body working in perfect harmony with the machine. Her ponytail streamed behind her as she made a tight turn at the bottom of the drive. Lily's hands gripped her own wheelchair's armrests tighter, her knuckles turning white. Sophia made it look so effortless, so free. The chair wasn't holding her back, it was launching her forward. Every turn, every push of the wheels showed strength, not weakness. The morning sun caught the chrome of the racing chair, making it flash like lightning. Her fingers twitched involuntarily, imagining what it would feel like. The wind in her face, the burn in her arms, the pure speed of it all. But the fear crashed over her like a wave, bringing memories of screeching tires and shattering glass, and she quickly spun her chair around, rolling back inside faster than she'd moved in months. In her room that night, Lily stared at her hands in the dim light. She made them into fists, feeling the strength still there, waiting. The muscles in her arms were soft now, but she could remember how they used to feel after track practice. Solid, capable, powerful. The desire to try the racing chair burned in her chest, and that wanting scared her more than anything else had in 2 years. Because wanting meant hoping, and hoping meant risking disappointment all over again. The morning sun cast long golden shadows across the front porch as Lily sat in her wheelchair, watching Sophia's determined strides around the track. Her fingers gripped the armrests so tightly that her knuckles turned stark white, betraying the storm of emotions churning and roiling within her. The familiar creaking squeak of the old floorboards announced Ethan's quiet presence before his gentle, soothing voice broke the heavy silence that had settled between them. "You don't have to do this, you know," Ethan said softly, his words laced with a hint of concern. Lily kept her eyes stubbornly fixed on Sophia's lithe, athletic form as she effortlessly lapped the track, refusing to meet her father's warm, empathetic gaze. "I know," she replied simply, her tone flat and devoid of emotion. Ethan paused for a moment, allowing the gentle morning breeze to fill the weighted space between them. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he added, "But you want to." The words hung in the air like a silent challenge, daring Lily to confront the truth of his statement. Before she could second-guess herself or allow her doubts to take hold, Lily released her death grip on the armrests and, with a deep, steadying breath, rolled her wheelchair down the driveway toward the sleek, intimidating racing chair that waited for her. Sophia, who had been running laps, immediately stopped mid-stride, her face lighting up with a barely contained excitement and anticipation. "Shut up," Lily snapped preemptively, cutting off whatever comment or quip Sophia had been about to make. Sophia's lips twitched into a knowing, amused smirk. "Didn't say anything," she replied, her tone light and playful, yet with an underlying current of understanding. From his spot on the porch, Ethan lifted his coffee mug to his lips, pretending to be absorbed in the morning newspaper. But his eyes never left the scene unfolding before him, watching his daughter's every move with a mixture of pride and trepidation. The racing wheelchair sat there, sleek and imposing, a physical representation of the challenge that lay before Lily. Her heart thundered in her chest as she positioned herself beside the chair, her fingers trembling slightly. With practiced movements that still felt foreign and unfamiliar in this new context, she transferred herself into the seat, the familiar yet different weight and balance of the chair, making her acutely aware of the changes in her life. Her hands found the wheels, the sensation both familiar and novel. She didn't move, couldn't move. The fear and trepidation wrapped around her chest like a vice, making it hard for her to breathe. Sophia knelt beside her, her voice uncharacteristically gentle and soothing. "It's just forward," she said, her words a simple encouragement. Lily drew in a shaky, steadying breath, feeling the morning air fill her lungs. Her fingers tightened around the wheels, and then, with a surge of determination, she pushed. The chair moved forward, not smoothly, not quickly, but it moved. The sensation was different from her regular wheelchair, more athletic, more purposeful. Sophia stayed quiet, matching Lily's pace with slow, measured steps beside her, offering silent support and reassurance. Ethan watched from his position on the porch, his coffee forgotten, his eyes bright with unshed tears of pride and hope as he witnessed his daughter's first tentative steps toward reclaiming her life. After a few feet, Lily stopped, letting out a sharp, shaky exhale. Her hands trembled against the wheels, the weight of the moment settling upon her. Sophia crouched down beside her, her voice free of its usual teasing tone, soft and encouraging. "Not bad for your first ride," she said, a small, proud smile tugging at the corners of her lips. Lily didn't argue or dismiss the compliment, and that silence said more than any words ever could. The early morning air was crisp as Lily adjusted herself in the racing wheelchair, her hands finding their position on the wheels with growing familiarity. She had gotten here early, before Sophia's usual arrival time, wanting to practice without an audience. But of course, Sophia showed up just as Lily was settling in. Sophia's face broke into a knowing grin as she approached. "So, I guess we're doing this?" Lily rolled her eyes, trying to hide the flutter of excitement in her chest. "We'll see." The track stretched before them, still damp with morning dew. Lily pushed forward, her movements stronger than before but still unsteady. The straight sections weren't the problem, she could handle those now. But the curves, those were different. Her chair wobbled as she approached the first turn, her grip tightening with frustration. "Keep it steady," Sophia called out, jogging alongside. "You're fighting the chair too much." "I know what I'm doing," Lily snapped, but her next turn was just as shaky. She slammed her palm against the wheel in frustration. "This is stupid." "You're overthinking it," Sophia said, her voice calm and matter-of-fact. "Let the momentum carry you through." "Easy for you to say," Lily bit back, her voice sharp with bitterness. Sophia stopped running. She stood still, her expression serious. "Actually, it's not." She gestured to her own legs. "You think I just woke up one day knowing how to walk again? Every step was a battle." Lily's anger deflated as she really looked at Sophia, not as an intruder or an annoyance, but as someone who understood, someone who had fought their own battles with their body. The realization settled over her like a heavy blanket. Taking a deep breath, Lily positioned herself at the start of the curve again. This time, she didn't fight the chair's natural movement. She let it flow, adjusting her grip slightly, feeling the rhythm of the turn. And suddenly, it clicked. The chair moved smoothly through the curve, exactly as it should. Lily's heart leaped as she completed the turn perfectly. "There it is," Sophia said quietly, a genuine smile on her face. Lily didn't smile back. She wasn't ready for that yet. But she didn't snap either. Instead, she positioned herself for another turn, ready to prove it wasn't just luck. This time she knew she could do it. The living room was dark and silent as Lily wheeled herself in, her movements careful and measured. The only light came from the soft glow of street lamps filtering through the windows. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked up the remote, her finger hovering over the buttons. After a moment's hesitation, she pressed play. The screen flickered to life, illuminating her face with its blue glow. There she was, the old Lily, crossing finish lines, breaking records, standing tall on podiums. Her throat tightened as she watched herself sprint down tracks, arms pumping with perfect form, legs carrying her effortlessly toward victory after victory. "I used to make it look so easy," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible in the quiet room. The soft creak of floorboards made her stiffen. Sophia stood in the doorway, wearing oversized pajamas, her hair messy from sleep. Lily waited for some comment, some attempt at cheerful encouragement. But Sophia just padded over and sat down beside her wheelchair, drawing her knees up to her chest. They watched in silence as past Lily accepted another medal, her smile bright and confident. Present Lily's hands clenched into fists in her lap. "I don't even recognize her anymore," Lily said, her voice rough. "That girl, she knew exactly who she was, what she wanted." She swallowed hard, forcing the words out. "I don't know who I am without running." Sophia didn't turn to look at her, didn't offer empty comfort. Instead, she kept her eyes on the screen and said simply, "Then find out." Lily blinked, caught off guard by the challenge in those 3 words. "What?" "Find out who you are now," Sophia said. "Stop trying to be who you were. Figure out who you want to become." The words hung in the air between them. On screen, past Lily continued to run, continued to win, continued to be everything present. Lily thought she could never be again. But for the first time, watching herself didn't feel like staring at a ghost. It felt like looking at a chapter that had ended, making room for a new one to begin. Sophia stood up quietly, stretching. "I'm going back to bed." She paused at the doorway. "You coming?" Lily's eyes stayed fixed on the screen for a long moment. Then she clicked it off, plunging the room back into darkness. Without a word, she turned her chair and followed Sophia down the hall. The house settled into silence again, but something had shifted, like the first crack in a wall of ice, small but significant. The next morning, when Sophia stepped outside for training, she found Lily already there waiting. The sun hadn't yet crested the horizon when Lily wheeled herself onto the track, her breath visible in the crisp morning air. Her movements were precise as she adjusted her racing gloves, making sure each finger was properly positioned. The wheelchair beneath her was no longer just equipment, it was an extension of herself. Sophia jogged up, already warmed up and ready to go. She couldn't help but smile at the sight of Lily meticulously checking her gear. "Look at you, all serious," she teased, stretching her arms above her head. Lily shot her a sharp glare. "Shut up and run." Their training had evolved into something different now. Lily's pushes were stronger, more controlled. She took each turn with calculated precision, her upper body leaning into the curves just right. The chair responded to her touch like it was made for her. "Your stride's too wide," Lily called out as Sophia passed her. "You're wasting energy. Tighten it up." Sophia adjusted immediately, her feet falling into a more efficient rhythm. "Better?" "Much," Lily nodded, then demonstrated a perfect turn around the track's bend. "See how I'm leaning? That's what you need to do on the curves too." They worked in sync now, Lily coaching Sophia's running form while Sophia pushed Lily to go faster, longer, harder. The morning air filled with their steady breathing and the smooth sound of wheels on pavement. After a particularly good sprint, Lily pulled up alongside Sophia, her eyes bright with determination. "We're going to win," she said, the words coming out clear and confident. Sophia's face broke into a wide grin. "Now you're getting it." They continued pushing themselves until their muscles burned and sweat soaked through their clothes. Finally, they collapsed on the track, both breathing hard but satisfied. Lily wiped her forehead with her sleeve, looking over at Sophia. "If we win, you owe me pizza," she said between breaths. Sophia laughed, lying back on the cool pavement. "If we win, I'll buy you a whole restaurant." The morning air was crisp and cool, But Lily's arms burned as she pushed herself around the track for what felt like the 100th time. Sweat dripped down her face and her shoulders screamed in protest, but she refused to slow down. 2 days until the marathon. She couldn't afford to rest. Sophia stood at the edge of the track, her face etched with concern. "Take a break," she called out, watching Lily's increasingly unsteady movements. Lily shot her a fierce glare, not breaking her rhythm. "I don't need a break." Her pushes were getting sloppy, her technique suffering as exhaustion set in. Her breathing came in ragged gasps, but still she pushed forward, harder and faster. Sophia's worry turned to alarm as she noticed Lily's arms trembling. "You're going to hurt yourself," Sophia finally yelled, stepping onto the track. "I know my limit," Lily snapped back, her voice raw with emotion. Sophia moved closer, her eyes narrowing. "Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you're being reckless." "You don't understand," Lily spat, finally stopping her chair. Her chest heaved as she tried to catch her breath. "You have no idea what kind of pressure I'm under." "Then explain it to me," Sophia challenged, throwing her hands up in frustration. Something in Lily broke. Her voice cracked as she screamed, "I need to win! I need to be good at something again!" The words echoed across the empty track, hanging heavy in the air between them. Lily's whole body shook, whether from exhaustion or emotion, it wasn't clear. Her hands gripped her wheels so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Tears mixed with sweat on her face. Sophia's expression softened. She didn't yell this time. Instead, her voice was quiet but firm as she said, "You were always good at something. Winning wasn't it." The words hit Lily like a physical blow. She recoiled, her face crumpling. Without another word, she spun her chair around and pushed away, leaving Sophia standing alone on the track. Sophia watched her go, her heart heavy with worry. She could see now what Lily was really fighting against, and it wasn't just about winning a race. The moonlight filtered through Lily's window, casting long shadows across her bedroom floor. Her hands trembled slightly as she examined them in the dim light, each muscle aching from the day's intense training. The pain wasn't just physical anymore, it ran deeper, reaching into places she'd kept locked away for 2 years. When the soft knock came at her door, Lily didn't bother responding. She knew who it was, and she knew Sophia would come in anyway. Sure enough, the door creaked open, and Sophia's familiar silhouette appeared in the doorway. Without a word, Sophia crossed the room and sat down beside Lily. The silence between them felt different now, no longer hostile, but understanding. They stayed that way for several minutes, just existing in the quiet together. "I don't know who I am without racing," Lily finally whispered, her voice barely audible. The admission felt like ripping off a bandage, exposing a wound she'd been hiding for so long. Sophia turned to look at her, her expression gentle in the moonlight. "You're Lily. You're my sister. That's enough." Lily's hands clenched into fists in her lap. What if I lose? The question carried the weight of all her fears, all her doubts about who she'd become since the accident. "Then we start again," Sophia said simply, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Lily let out a shaky breath, feeling something shift inside her chest. For the first time since Sophia had arrived, she really looked at her, not with anger or resentment, but with genuine gratitude. This girl, who had started as an unwanted intruder, had somehow become her anchor. "Okay," Lily said softly, nodding her head. Tomorrow, they would race. The night air was crisp and cool, carrying the faint scent of autumn leaves. Lily and Sophia sat on the back porch, their faces tilted toward the star-filled sky above. The silence between them felt comfortable, weighted with everything they'd been through together. The only sound was the gentle creaking of Lily's wheelchair as she shifted position. "What if everything changes after this?" Lily's whisper barely carried on the night breeze. Her fingers played with the edge of her sleeve, betraying her nervousness. Sophia turned to look at her, a gentle smile spreading across her face. "It already has." Inside, Lily's mind raced through every possible scenario for tomorrow's race. She went over the course map for the 100th time, calculating turns and estimating speeds. Her hands clenched and unclenched unconsciously, mimicking the motions she'd need to make. The soft sound of footsteps made both girls look up. Ethan stood in the doorway, his face tired but proud. He walked over to Lily, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "The outcome doesn't matter," he said softly. "You already won the hardest battle." Lily's throat tightened. She wanted to believe him, but doubt still gnawed at her edges. Still, she managed a small nod, recognizing the truth in his words, even if she couldn't fully accept them yet. Sophia suddenly jumped up, reaching into her pocket. "Oh, almost forgot." She pulled out a simple athletic wristband, dark blue with silver threading. "For luck," she said, holding it out to Lily. Lily snorted, trying to hide how touched she was by the gesture. "I don't believe in luck." Sophia's grin widened as she placed the wristband in Lily's palm. "Then believe in me." The wristband was soft against Lily's skin. She ran her thumb over the fabric, feeling the slight texture of the silver threads. Sophia stretched her arms above her head and yawned dramatically. "Well, I'm heading in. Big day tomorrow." She squeezed Lily's shoulder as she passed, disappearing into the house. Lily remained outside, her face turned back toward the stars. The wristband felt warm in her hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she slipped it onto her wrist. It fit perfectly. She tightened it, adjusting it until it felt just right. The night sky stretched endlessly above her, countless stars twinkling against the darkness. Tomorrow, she would race. Not to prove anything to anyone else, not even to prove she could still be an athlete, because somewhere along the way she'd realized she never stopped being one. The morning sun painted the sky in soft pinks and oranges as Ethan's car pulled into the crowded parking lot. Lily sat in the back seat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, watching the growing crowd through the window. Hundreds of people milled about, runners stretching, volunteers setting up water stations, spectators claiming spots along the route. Her racing wheelchair, already positioned near the starting line, gleamed in the early light. Sophia twisted around in the passenger seat, her usual confident grin spreading across her face. "Still breathing?" Lily forced out a shaky breath. "Barely." The car came to a stop and Ethan stepped out first. He opened Lily's door, patting her shoulder gently. "No matter what happens, I'm proud of you." His voice was soft but steady, carrying the weight of everything they'd been through to get here. As Sophia helped Lily unload their gear, other athletes warmed up nearby. Lily's eyes were drawn to them, particularly the para-athletes. Some pushed themselves in racing wheelchairs like hers, while others adjusted prosthetic limbs. The sight made her chest feel lighter somehow. These people understood. "Hey!" a voice called out. A woman in her 30s wheeled over, recognition lighting up her face. "You're that sprinter, right? Lily Calloway?" Lily's throat tightened. She hesitated, then managed a small nod. "I was..." Sophia nudged her shoulder, hard enough to make Lily rock slightly. "You still are." Her tone left no room for argument. More athletes gathered around, some sharing their own stories of comebacks and adaptations. Lily found herself relaxing slightly, drawn into conversations about technique and training. These weren't people offering pity. They were competitors just like her. The announcement system crackled to life, calling all participants to their starting positions. Lily's heart rate spiked again. Sophia noticed, because of course she did. "Hey," Sophia said, crouching beside Lily's chair. "Remember what we trained for? You've got this." They moved to their positions, Lily adjusting her gloves one final time. The starting line stretched before them, full of possibility and terror all at once. She gripped her wheels, feeling the familiar texture beneath her palms. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. The official raised the starting gun. The crowd fell silent. 3, 2, 1. The gun cracked through the morning air. "Go!" The starting gun cracked through the morning air. Lily's hands gripped her wheels and pushed forward with practiced precision. The instant surge of momentum hit her like an old friend returning. Wind whipped past her face, her arms moved in perfect rhythm, and the world around her blurred into focused clarity. This feeling, she had almost forgotten it. The pure rush of racing, of moving exactly how she wanted to move. Her wheelchair responded to her every command, smooth and controlled, just like in training. But this was different. This was real. Sophia's steady footfalls kept pace beside her, their months of training evident in how naturally they moved together. They weaved through the crowd of runners, finding their rhythm. Lily's arms burned with familiar effort, but she welcomed it. This wasn't pain. It was power. The crowd's cheers faded into white noise. All Lily could hear was her own heartbeat, her measured breathing, and the soft whir of her wheels against pavement. Mile markers passed. 2, 5, 8. She wasn't just participating. She was competing. Really competing. For the first time in 2 years, Lily wasn't thinking about what she had lost. She wasn't dwelling on her past or fearing her future. She was simply here, in this moment, doing what she was born to do: race. Sophia kept stride, her breathing steady but labored. They had trained for this, pushed each other to their limits. Now they moved as one unit, neither willing to let the other fall behind. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the course. Then came mile 10. Lily heard it first, a slight catch in Sophia's breathing, a stumble in her usually perfect stride. She glanced over just as Sophia's knee buckled slightly. Her sister caught herself quickly, but Lily saw the flash of pain cross her face. Sophia forced a grin, sweat gleaming on her forehead. "I'm good," she panted. "Keep going." Lily hesitated, her momentum faltering for just a second. Sophia's eyes met hers, determined, fierce, unwavering. Lily tightened her grip on her wheels and pushed forward, her heart pounding with more than just exertion now. The race stretched ahead of them, miles of uncertainty waiting. But they had come too far to stop now. Lily's arms moved in perfect rhythm, each push of her racing wheelchair propelling her forward with practiced precision. The familiar burn in her muscles felt good, like coming home. Mile marker 16 flew past, and she allowed herself a small smile. She was doing it. Really doing it. Then she heard it, a sharp gasp from behind. The sound cut through her focus like a knife. Lily twisted around just in time to see Sophia stumble, her legs giving out beneath her. Her friend's face was ghost white, chest heaving as she tried to catch herself. "Sophia!" Lily called out, her heart jumping into her throat. Sophia attempted to keep running, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. They buckled completely, sending her crashing onto the pavement with a sickening thud. She didn't get up. Lily yanked her wheelchair to a stop, the wheels skidding slightly. Her breath came in short bursts as she watched Sophia lying there gasping for air. Race volunteers in bright yellow vests were already rushing toward them. "I'm fine!" Sophia tried to wave them off, but her arms shook with the effort. "Lily, keep going, don't stop!" But Lily couldn't move. Her hands gripped her wheels so tightly her knuckles turned white. The finish line beckoned ahead. She could almost see it. After everything, she was so close. All those months of training, fighting through pain and doubt, proving she could still compete. A crowd gathered around Sophia as medical volunteers knelt beside her. Sophia's face was contorted in pain and frustration. "Please," she begged Lily between gasps. "Don't quit because of me. You can win this." Lily's chest tightened. She could do it. She could keep going, cross that finish line, prove to everyone, and herself, that she was still an athlete, that the accident hadn't broken her. But as she watched Sophia struggling to even sit up, Lily knew she couldn't leave her behind. Not after everything Sophia had done for her. Not after Sophia had refused to give up on her when everyone else had. Lily's hands loosened their death grip on her wheels. The finish line could wait. Some things were more important than winning. Lily's wheels skidded as she spun around, her heart thundering in her chest. Sophia lay crumpled on the pavement, her legs twisted beneath her, face pale and drawn with exhaustion. Other runners streamed past them, their footsteps creating a steady drumbeat on the asphalt. "No, keep going," Sophia gasped, trying to push herself up but failing. Her arms trembled with the effort. "You're so close, don't stop." Lily's fingers tightened on her wheels as she watched more runners pass. The competitive fire in her chest burned hot. She could still win this. She was strong enough, trained enough. But Sophia's ragged breathing cut through her thoughts like a knife. "Please," Sophia wheezed. "Don't throw this away, not for me." Lily looked ahead at the stream of runners, then back at Sophia. The choice crystallized in her mind with startling clarity. Without hesitation, she reached down and unbuckled the straps securing her to the racing wheelchair. Gasps rippled through the nearby crowd as they realized what she was doing. Lily planted her palms firmly on the hot pavement, ignoring the rough texture biting into her skin. With a grunt of effort, she began to drag herself forward. "Lily, no!" Sophia's voice cracked. "What are you doing?" "What you taught me to do," Lily growled through gritted teeth. "Fighting." Her arms trembled as she pulled herself along the course. The asphalt scraped against her legs, but she barely felt it. Each movement was a battle. Every inch gained a victory. Sweat dripped from her forehead, but she didn't stop. The crowd fell silent, then erupted in cheers, but Lily barely heard them. Her world had narrowed to the space between her hands, to the next few inches she needed to conquer. Her muscles screamed in protest, but she kept moving. Behind her, Sophia's tears fell freely as she watched her friend, her sister, refuse to give up. Not for victory, not for a medal, but for something far more important. The finish line loomed ahead, impossibly far. But Lily didn't look up. She just kept crawling, one excruciating movement at a time. Her arms burned like fire, but she wouldn't stop. Not now, not ever again. The asphalt burned against Lily's palms as she pressed them flat against the ground. Her breathing came in sharp, ragged bursts. The world around her seemed to freeze. Hundreds of eyes fixed on her every movement. She could feel the heat radiating from the pavement, smell the rubber and sweat in the air. With trembling arms, she pulled herself forward. The rough surface scraped against her knees, but she barely noticed the pain. One movement, then another. Her muscles screamed in protest, but she refused to stop. Sophia tried to push herself up, tears streaming down her face. "Lily, what are you doing?" Her voice cracked with emotion. The crowd had fallen completely silent. Ethan stood at the sidelines, his hands balled into tight fists, watching his daughter with a mixture of fear and awe. His heart pounded so hard he could barely breathe. Lily dragged herself another foot forward, her arms shaking with the effort. Someone in the crowd gasped, then another. A murmur rippled through the spectators as they realized what they were witnessing. "Come on," a voice called out from the crowd. Then another joined in, and another. Sweat dripped down Lily's face as she forced her legs underneath her body. Every muscle trembled with the effort, but she wouldn't give up. Not now. Not when she was so close. The cheering grew louder, a wave of support washing over her. With pure determination coursing through her veins, Lily began to push herself upward. Her legs shook violently, muscles that hadn't supported her weight in 2 years struggling to remember their purpose. But she kept pushing, kept fighting. Sophia watched through tear-filled eyes as her sister did the impossible. The crowd's cheering had become deafening, but Lily barely heard it. All she could focus on was the next movement, the next inch upward. Finally, swaying like a tree in a storm, Lily stood. Her hand shot out, grabbing Sophia's shoulder for support. Their eyes met, Sophia's filled with tears, Lily's blazing with determination. Together, they found their balance standing side by side on shaking legs. The crowd erupted in thunderous applause, but to Lily and Sophia, the world had narrowed to just this moment, just their shared strength as they stood together, ready to take the next step forward. The roar of the crowd swelled like a tidal wave as Lily and Sophia stood together, swaying but determined. Lily's legs trembled beneath her, muscles that hadn't supported her weight in 2 years now straining with every tiny movement, but she refused to fall. "We finish this together," Sophia said, her voice thick with emotion. Her arm wrapped firmly around Lily's waist, providing the support she needed. Lily nodded, her breath coming in sharp gasps. "Let's go." They took the first step together, then another, and another. Each movement was agony, but Lily pushed through the pain. Her father's voice cut through the crowd's cheers, raw with pride and encouragement. "You've got this, baby. Keep going." Other runners stopped in their tracks, forming an impromptu honor guard. Some wiped tears from their eyes. Others clapped and shouted encouragement. But Lily barely heard them. Her entire world had narrowed to just this. The next step, then the next. Sophia's own legs shook with exhaustion, but she never loosened her grip. Together they stumbled forward, each supporting the other. The finish line drew closer with each painful step. 20 feet, 10 feet, 5. And then they crossed it. The crowd erupted in deafening cheers. Ethan broke through the barrier, tears streaming down his face as he ran toward them. Lily's legs finally gave out, and she collapsed into Sophia's arms, both of them falling to the ground. But they were laughing, crying and laughing at the same time, holding each other tight. Sophia pressed her forehead against Lily's shoulder, her whole body shaking with sobs of joy and exhaustion. "You did it," she whispered. "You actually did it." Lily couldn't speak. She just held on tighter, tears running freely down her face. In that moment, winning or losing didn't matter. She had done something far more important. She had proved to herself that she was still strong, still unbreakable. The crowd continued to cheer around them, but in their small bubble on the ground, Lily and Sophia just held each other, laughing and crying. It wasn't just a victory. It was a miracle. Their miracle. The morning sun cast long shadows across the track as Lily adjusted her position in her sleek new racing wheelchair. The carbon fiber frame gleamed in the early light, a gift from her father after the marathon. Sophia jogged in place beside her, her face bright with anticipation. "Ready?" Sophia asked, bouncing on her toes. Lily tightened her gloves and gripped the wheels with practiced confidence. A smirk played across her lips. "Born ready." From his spot in the stands, Ethan watched his daughters prepare for their morning training session. His heart swelled at the sight. Just months ago, this track had been empty, a painful reminder of everything Lily had lost. Now it was alive again with their energy and laughter. Lily pushed forward, her movements fluid and powerful. The chair responded instantly, carrying her faster and faster around the curve. Sophia matched her pace, their breathing falling into perfect rhythm. The sound of wheels on pavement mixed with their footfalls created a steady beat. "Keep up!" Lily called out, accelerating through the straightaway. Her laugh echoed across the track, pure joy, unrestricted by fear or doubt. Sophia pushed harder, grinning as she drew even with Lily's chair. "In your dreams." They raced neck and neck, neither willing to give an inch. This wasn't about winning anymore. It wasn't about proving anything. It was simply about the thrill of movement, the rush of speed, the freedom of flying around the track together. Ethan leaned forward in his seat, completely absorbed in watching them. He remembered the silence that had filled their house after the accident. The way Lily had withdrawn into herself, refusing help, refusing hope. Now her smile lit up the morning. Her strength wasn't measured in medals anymore, but in the way she faced each day with determination and grace. As they approached the finish line, Lily surged ahead with one final burst of speed. Her arms burned with the effort, but she welcomed the sensation. Every push of the wheels, every strain of muscle reminded her that she was still an athlete, still a competitor, still herself. She crossed the line first, slowing to a controlled stop as Sophia jogged up beside her, both of them breathing hard. Lily looked up at her sister, eyes bright with triumph. Now that was a real race. Sophia laughed, reaching down to squeeze Lily's shoulder. "Told you weren't broken." The community center auditorium buzzed with anticipation as Lily wheeled onto the stage. Young athletes filled the seats, many in wheelchairs, others with various adaptive equipment. Their eyes followed her movement, hungry for hope. Sophia leaned against the back wall, arms crossed, a proud smile playing on her lips. She watched as Lily adjusted the microphone, her hands steady now, confident. "For a long time I thought my life was over," Lily began, her voice clear and strong. "That I'd never run again, that I wasn't whole." She paused, looking out at the sea of faces. In their eyes, she saw her own past reflection, the fear, the uncertainty, the desperate need to believe in something more. Her smile softened. "But I was never broken. I was just waiting to find a new way to fly." The words hung in the air for a moment before applause thundered through the room. Young faces lit up with understanding and possibility. Lily saw tears in some parents' eyes, the same hope she now saw daily in her father's. After the speech, kids crowded around her, eager to share their stories and ask questions. A young girl in a wheelchair similar to Lily's approached shyly. "Did you really crawl across the finish line?" she asked, eyes wide with wonder. Lily nodded, reaching out to squeeze the girl's hand. Sometimes the biggest victories aren't about finishing first. They're about finishing together. Sophia pushed off the wall and walked over, that familiar smirk on her face. "Told you you'd be inspiring." Lily laughed, the sound free and easy now. "Don't get used to it." From his spot near the stage, Ethan watched his daughters interact with the crowd. His heart felt full to bursting. The shadow that had haunted Lily's eyes for so long was gone, replaced by a light he'd feared he'd never see again. Later that night, Lily and Sophia sat in their usual spot outside, gazing up at the stars. The evening air was cool and clean, carrying the scent of possibility. Lily leaned back in her chair, taking a deep breath. The question she'd held inside for so long finally found its way out. "Do you think Mom would be proud?" she asked softly. Sophia's answer came without hesitation, gentle but certain. She already was. Lily closed her eyes, letting the peace of the moment wash over her. For the first time in years, she felt complete. Not because she had returned to who she was before, but because she had finally embraced who she had become. She was no longer running from her past. She was racing toward her future. If you enjoyed the story of Lily, I handpicked this next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.